Zuri never forgot the day her mother stood in her doorway with a measuring tape, not to help her decorate, but to calculate how much of her home could be stripped away. And the worst part? They didn't even ask if she was okay. They only asked where she kept the land documents. Because her brother got a $950,000 luxury house. And now they wanted hers. Zuri came home tired after working a long double shift, dreaming only of a quiet evening. But the moment she opened her door, she found her parents already inside, walking around her living room like inspectors. They didn't even greet her properly. They just touched her walls, opened her cupboards, and whispered to each other while shaking their heads. Her mother kept comparing every part of Zuri's small home to her brother Oba's new $950,000 mansion. Oba's kitchen is bigger. Oba's bathroom has marble. Oba's house feels richer, she said again and again. Zuri stood there silently, watching them judge the only place she could proudly call her own. She had worked for years to afford this home. She bought each piece of furniture slowly, saving every coin. Every corner held a memory of her hard work. But her parents didn't see any of that. They only saw what it could become for Oba. Then her mother turned to her with a strange smile and said something that felt like a knife. Your brother's house is too small for expanding his family. Give him yours. You can rent somewhere cheaper. Zuri froze. She thought she heard wrong, but her mother repeated the same words with even more confidence. Her father nodded as if the decision was already made. They spoke about her home like she was already gone, like she had no right to feel anything. Her mother even started measuring the walls with a tape, checking the sizes of the rooms, planning how Oba could renovate this place nicely once Zuri moves out. They didn't ask if she agreed. They didn't ask if she could afford to move. They didn't ask if she was okay. They just assumed she would obey, like she always did. Oba wasn't even there, but they talked about him as if he was the only one who mattered. It was in that moment, standing in her own living room, watching her parents plan her removal, that Zuri felt something painful but clear settle inside her. She finally understood how little they valued her. She wasn't a daughter to them. She was only a backup, a tool, someone to sacrifice whenever Oba needed something. For the first time, Zuri felt her heart harden. And she knew, quietly and firmly, that this time she would not be giving them anything, not even her walls. Oba arrived in the evening with his fiancée, walking into Zuri's home like he already owned it. He didn't even remove his shoes or ask if he could come in. He just smiled that proud, lazy smile he always had. The same smile he used whenever he expected people to give him things. His fiancée looked around the house with a bright, excited face, touching the walls and pointing at the ceiling as if she was already planning her future life there. Oba didn't ask Zuri how she was or if she had eaten after her long day at work. Instead, he clapped his hands once and said, "We will renovate everything the moment you move out. This living room will look so much better when we change the paint. And this kitchen, will make it more modern." His fiancée agreed loudly, already imagining new lights, new furniture, new decorations. They talked like the house was a prize they had won, not a place Zuri had struggled to build with years of sweat. Zuri sat quietly, watching them talk about her home like she was invisible. And in their voices, she heard every painful memory she tried to bury. She remembered all the birthdays she never celebrated because her parents used the money to buy Oba gifts. She remembered paying his school fees while she skipped meals. She remembered working part-time jobs as a teenager while Oba went out with friends, came home late, and slept all day. He remembered how her parents always praised him, even when he failed, and blamed her, even when she succeeded. She remembered the endless sacrifices she made, sacrifices no one ever thanked her for. And now, Oba was standing in her home, acting like she owed him this too. Zuri looked at him and truly saw him for the first time. Not as her brother, but as someone who had never lifted a finger in his life. Someone who had grown used to everyone bending for him. Someone who expected to receive without ever giving. Someone who believed the world existed to make him comfortable. As his fiancée excitedly talked about painting Zuri's bedroom pink and turning her study into a walk-in closet, Zuri felt something shift inside her. It was not anger at first. It was a tiredness so deep it felt heavy. But slowly, the tiredness turned into something stronger. Something firm. Something that said, "No more." For the first time in her life, Zuri felt her heart stand up for her. She knew Oba expected her to give in like she always did. He thought she would smile, move out quietly, and let him enjoy her hard work. But this time she wasn't bending. Not for him. Not for her parents. Not for anyone ever again. Zuri couldn't sleep after everything that happened. Her parents' words kept replaying in her head, and Oba's proud smile stayed stuck in her mind. The next morning, she went to visit her close friend, Amina, who worked in property law. Zuri didn't plan to say much at first. She only wanted to understand how her parents could decide to take her house so easily. But as soon as she started talking, the worry in Amina's eyes made her heart beat faster. Amina asked Zuri if she knew how Oba's $950,000 mansion had really been paid for. Zuri quickly said, "My parents' savings, of course. They told everyone." Amina sighed and gently pulled some documents from her drawer. She told Zuri she had checked the property files out of curiosity, because something didn't look normal. Then she pushed the papers toward Zuri and said, "I think you need to see this." Zuri's hands shook as she opened the file. She didn't understand everything at first, but then Amina explained slowly and clearly. The money used to buy Oba's mansion didn't come from her parents' savings. It came from a trust fund belonging to Zuri. Money her late aunt had left for her future. Money meant to protect her. Money meant to give her independence. Zuri blinked, confused, until Amina pointed to a signature on the documents. "This is supposed to be your signature," she said. "But it doesn't match your real one." Zuri looked closely and felt her stomach twist. Someone had forged her name. Someone had signed away her inheritance without her permission. Someone she trusted had stolen her future and handed it to Oba like a gift. Her chest tightened as the truth hit her. Her parents hadn't just favored Oba. They had taken what belonged to her. They had used her aunt's love, her aunt's last gift, to build a luxurious life for their golden child. They had left Zuri with nothing but debts, responsibilities, and a home they were now trying to take away too. Amina touched her hand gently and said, "Zuri, this is serious. This is fraud." And it was planned. For a long moment, Zuri couldn't speak. A cold, heavy silence filled her heart. She felt hurt, betrayed, and strangely calm at the same time. It was the kind of calm that comes before a storm. She folded the documents carefully and thanked Amina. She didn't cry. She didn't explode. She walked out of the office with a new kind of strength, because now she knew the truth, and she knew what she had to do next. Quietly, secretly, Zuri began collecting every piece of evidence she could find, determined to take back what was hers. 2 days after learning the truth, Zuri was sitting quietly in her living room when she heard loud voices outside. When she opened the door, she saw her parents standing there, this time not with questions but with boxes stacked beside them. Behind them was a truck, and 2 hired workers were waiting with empty crates. Her mother didn't even greet her. She simply pointed at the boxes and said, "Pack your things. You have 2 days to leave. Oba wants to start renovations soon." Zuri felt her chest tighten. They weren't asking. They were ordering her out of her own home. Her father walked inside and began touching the walls again, telling the workers where to start. Her mother opened Zuri's wardrobe without permission and shook her head like everything inside belonged to a stranger. It was as if they believed her house was already theirs to control. Zuri stepped forward and said firmly, "I'm not leaving." Her mother paused, then turned around with a cold, angry face. "Zuri," she said sharply, "don't be ungrateful. We're helping you. Oba needs this place. You can rent a small apartment somewhere cheaper. You don't need a house like this anyway." The workers waited awkwardly, unsure what to do. Zuri's father waved them on and said, "Start with the living room." That was the moment something strong rose inside Zuri. She pushed the door fully open, stood between the workers and the hallway, and repeated, "I am not leaving." Her mother's face twisted with pure anger, the kind Zuri had only seen when she was a child. She stepped close and hissed, "We created you. We can uncreate your comfort." It was a threat, a reminder that they believed they controlled her life, her choices, even her home. But Zuri didn't move. She didn't shout back. She didn't beg. She simply walked to the door, closed it gently, and locked it right in front of them. Her parents banged on the door and shouted her name, telling her not to embarrass them, threatening to cut ties with her. She didn't answer. The workers eventually left, confused, and the truck drove away. Her parents stood outside for a long time before leaving too, furious and humiliated. Inside, Zuri leaned against the door and finally let the tears fall. But they weren't tears of fear or weakness. They were tears of understanding, because now everything made sense. Their love was never love. Their care was never care. She had only been useful to them when she was giving. That night, for the first time in her life, Zuri saw her parents clearly. And that clarity made her stronger than she had ever been. Zuri spent the next morning sitting on the floor of her small storage room, surrounded by dusty boxes she hadn't opened in years. She pulled them out one by one, searching for anything connected to her late aunt, the only person who had ever treated her with real love. Inside the first box, she found old photos and birthday cards. In the second, she found carefully folded letters, written in her aunt's familiar handwriting. Zuri opened them slowly, reading each word with a heavy heart. Every letter repeated the same message. Her aunt wanted Zuri to stand on her own, to be free, to never depend on anyone, not even family, because she knew Zuri carried more responsibility than she deserved. One letter said, "This money is for your future, my child. Use it to build your own life. Do not let anyone take it from you." Zuri felt her throat tighten as she realized her aunt had seen everything long before anyone else did. In another box, she found financial summaries her aunt had kept. There were statements showing deposits made into Zuri's trust account. There were notes explaining why the money must remain untouched until Zuri matured and was ready. All the documents carried the same intention. The inheritance belonged to Zuri alone. It was meant to give her power, safety, and choices. But instead, her parents had stolen it and used it to elevate Oba. Holding those papers, Zuri felt something inside her shift again. The pain wasn't just from betrayal anymore. It was from the realization that someone who loved her had been disrespected too. Her aunt's final wishes had been ignored and twisted. Zuri wiped her face, gathered the documents, and left the house with a new determination. She went to the bank first, requesting her aunt's old account statements. The bank officer looked nervous but eventually revealed what she feared. Large transfers had been made from her trust, all authorized with a signature that wasn't hers. Next, she visited her aunt's lawyer. He confirmed that her aunt had written her will clearly. Zuri was the sole beneficiary. No one else was allowed to touch a single coin. He provided copies of the will and the instructions her aunt had left. Finally, she went to the property registrar, asking for details on the purchase of Oba's mansion. The registrar brought out documents listing the source of funds. The numbers matched her inheritance exactly. There was no more doubt. Her parents had taken everything meant for her and given it to Oba to live like royalty. Standing outside the registrar's office, Zuri felt tears slip down her cheeks. But this time they didn't weaken her. They sharpened her. Her pain turned into strength. Her hurt turned into a mission. And her tears turned into purpose. Zuri chose a quiet evening and sent a simple message to her parents and Oba, inviting them to dinner. It was the first time in her life she had ever asked them to come over. They arrived with the same confidence they always carried, walking into her home as if they were in control. Her mother sat down with a proud smile, already assuming Zuri had finally agreed to surrender the house. Her father crossed his arms, waiting for her to apologize. Oba leaned back in his chair, grinning, tapping the table impatiently like someone waiting to collect a prize. But Zuri wasn't the same woman they used to push around. She served them food quietly, then placed her phone on the table. Her voice was calm when she said, "Before anyone speaks, I want you all to listen to something." She pressed play. The first recording was the bank officer explaining that the signatures used to withdraw her inheritance were forged. Her mother's face stiffened immediately. The second audio was the bank confirming the dates of the transfers, every large amount taken right before Oba's mansion was purchased. Her father's smile slowly disappeared. Then Zuri brought out printed papers from the lawyer and registrar, placing them on the table one by one. They clearly showed her aunt's will, the trust fund details, and the transaction trail proving the money belonged to her. For the first time that night, the room became silent. Her mother opened her mouth but couldn't speak. Her father swallowed hard, looking away. Oba sat up straight, his grin gone, his forehead shining with sweat. He tried to laugh it off and said, "Zuri, this isn't necessary. You're being dramatic." The house was. Zuri didn't let him finish. She looked directly at him, her voice steady and sharp. The house you're living in? It's mine. Legally. Every brick. Every room. Every tile. It belongs to me, not you. Oba froze like someone had poured cold water on him. He tried to shout again, but his words came out broken, shaking. No, that's impossible. I live there. It's my house. Zuri slid the ownership documents across the table. Not anymore. Her mother finally found her voice, but it trembled. Zuri, how could you do this to your own family? Zuri looked at her without fear. You did this. Not me. You stole from me. You lied to me. You tried to force me out of my own home. Her parents sat in utter shock, unable to fight back. For the first time in her life, they had nothing left to say. And for the first time ever, Zuri watched her mother turn pale. The days after the dinner were quiet, but not peaceful. Zuri knew the truth was finally out, and she knew what would come next. She took all her documents, recordings, and evidence to the authorities. The moment she submitted everything, an official investigation began. For the first time, her parents and Oba were no longer in control. They were being questioned, watched, and forced to explain every action they had taken behind her back. Law enforcement visited the bank, the registrar, the lawyer's office, and even Zuri's home. They checked every signature, every transfer, every document. The forged signature was undeniable. The timing of the withdrawals matched perfectly with the purchase of Oba's mansion. The proof was strong. The law was on Zuri's side. Weeks passed, and each day felt like a slow climb. Zuri continued working, kept to herself, and waited for the truth to finally speak louder than her parents' lies. Her parents, who once walked with their heads high, now avoided neighbors and phone calls. Oba, who bragged about his mansion to everyone, suddenly became very quiet. The confidence they once carried around like a crown was slipping away. Then the court date arrived. Zuri sat in the courtroom with her lawyer, feeling nervous but steady. Her parents sat across from her, looking smaller than she had ever seen them. Oba kept wiping his palms on his trousers, unable to meet her eyes. The judge reviewed all the evidence, flipping through pages of documents that exposed everything they had done. The decision did not take long. The judge ruled that the inheritance belonged fully to Zuri. The forged signature made the purchase of Oba's mansion illegal. Because of this, the property had to be returned to its rightful owner, Zuri. Oba was ordered to vacate the mansion immediately, with no delay and no negotiation. Her parents were charged with document fraud and misuse of funds. They were required to pay penalties, and Zuri was awarded compensation for the damages and emotional distress caused by their actions. When the judge finished speaking, Zuri watched her parents' faces closely. The arrogance they once wore so proudly melted into pure fear. Her mother's hands trembled. Her father stared at the floor. Oba looked like he had swallowed something too heavy to keep down. They had spent years treating Zuri as if she were nothing. They had taken what belonged to her and handed it to their favorite child. But now, every single thing they stole was coming back to her. And they could do nothing to stop it. Zuri received the official keys to the mansion on a quiet afternoon. There was no crowd, no applause, no one beside her to cheer. She stood at the entrance for a long moment, holding the keys in her hand, feeling the weight of everything that had led her to this door. This was the same mansion her parents had bragged about, the same place Oba had shown off proudly, the same house she was once told to surrender her own home for. Now it belonged to her, rightfully, legally, completely. She pushed the door open slowly. The hallway was wide and elegant, filled with expensive furniture her family had chosen with excitement, never imagining she'd one day walk through it as the owner. But Zuri didn't rush inside or scream in victory. She stepped in quietly, almost gently, like someone stepping into a memory rather than a house. Her footsteps echoed on the polished floors as she walked from room to room. She touched the walls, the curtains, the railings, things she had paid for without even knowing. Every corner reminded her of a past moment. The evenings she worked double shifts, the holidays she skipped because she was paying bills, the birthdays she sacrificed while Oba celebrated with luxury. She thought of the nights she went to bed exhausted, only to wake up early to help her family, not knowing they were stealing behind her back. In the living room, she imagined her parents laughing as they signed documents with her forged signature. In the kitchen, she pictured Oba showing off the marble counters to his fiancée. In the master bedroom, She remembered her mother telling her she didn't deserve a big house because she was just a girl who worked too hard. Every memory carried pain, but none of it broke her now. Zuri didn't cry. She didn't smile triumphantly. She didn't feel the need to call anyone or post anything. She simply walked to the balcony, opened the glass doors and stepped outside. The air felt different, lighter, calmer, almost new. She stood there for a long moment, breathing deeply, letting everything settle inside her. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This wasn't about proving anything to her parents or Oba. It was about reclaiming herself, her rights, her voice, her future. For the first time ever, Zuri felt something she had never experienced in her family's house or her old small home. She felt free. She leaned on the balcony railing, watching the sunset, and realized she was finally living in a place that was meant to be hers all along. Not because of luck, not because someone gifted it to her, but because she fought for it. And she won. They come to her on a quiet afternoon, standing outside the tall mansion gate they once believed would always belong to Oba. This time there is no pride in their posture. No atetud, no sartoun. Just tired faces, shaky voices, and hands that suddenly look very small. Her mother calls her name softly, her father tries to smile, and Oba, who once walked around like a king, looks at the ground, unable to meet her eyes. They say they just want to talk. They say they need help. They say life has become too hard without her money holding everything together. Her father explains that bills are piling up. Her mother says they might lose their home. Oba whispers that he has nowhere else to go. For the first time, they sound like people who finally understand what they took from her and what they lost. Zuri doesn't rush to answer. She walks down the pathway slowly until she reaches them, her hands calm, her breathing steady. She doesn't feel anger anymore. She doesn't feel fear. She only feels distance, like the people in front of her are strangers she once knew. Her mother tries to touch her arm, reminding her of all the years they lived as a family. Her father promises they will do better this time. Oba says he was young, confused, influenced. Excuses that mean nothing now. They tell her they are sorry, that they made mistakes, that they just need one more chance to fix things. Zuri listens without interrupting, letting them pour out every reason, every excuse, every apology. When they finally stop talking, looking at her with hopeful eyes, she takes a breath and answers in a voice that is gentle, but unshakable. "You taught me that comfort and love belong to the child you prefer," she says softly. "So go to him. Let him give you the life you denied me." Their faces fall instantly. Her mother steps forward, begging again. Her father tries to speak, but his words break. Oba finally lifts his head, and she sees regret written all over him. But regret is not change, and it is not enough. Zuri shakes her head slowly. Not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. She has healed. She has rebuilt. She has learned. Then, without raising her voice, without insulting them, without anger, she steps back and closes the gate. Her parents call her name. Oba apologizes again. But the gate is closed now, firm, steady, final. She walks back into the home that was always hers, feeling a quiet, powerful peace. She didn't win by shouting. She didn't win by hurting them. She won by choosing herself. Zuri spent the following months slowly transforming the mansion. Every room reflected her own taste, colors she loved, furniture she chose, decorations that made her smile. She didn't rush, and she didn't feel the need to impress anyone. Every change, every small improvement reminded her that this was hers and hers alone. There was no one to please, no one to judge, no one to take it away this time. She built her life around calm and balance. Mornings were hers, quiet and peaceful, sometimes spent reading or having coffee on the balcony. Days were filled with work she enjoyed, projects that challenged her, and evenings were for rest and reflection. Slowly, she healed from years of being used, ignored and undervalued. She learned to trust herself first, to make decisions without fear, and to embrace the life she had fought for. The mansion was more than a home. It was proof that her hard work, patience, and courage could turn betrayal into victory. At sunset one evening, Zuri stood on the balcony, letting the golden light wash over her face. She looked out at the horizon and felt something she had never felt before. True ownership of her life. Not just the house, not just her inheritance, but her future, her choices, and her freedom. She had finally taken everything that was hers by right and refused to let anyone take it from her again. She thought of her parents and Oba, who had once believed they could control her, manipulate her, and erase her. They never expected she would rise above their greed, their lies, and their favoritism. But she did. She rose not by hurting them or plotting revenge, but by standing tall, claiming what was hers, and refusing to let them dictate her life ever again. The mansion, with every brick, every corner, and every room, became a symbol of her strength and independence. She didn't feel anger anymore. She didn't need to prove anything to them. She only needed to live fully, peacefully, and proudly, knowing she had earned this life with her own hands and courage. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Zuri smiled quietly to herself. This time, she wasn't giving a single brick back. Everything she had reclaimed was hers, her home, her peace, her future, and nothing could ever take it away again.